So earlier this week, we discussed the AT-DP, the walker seen commonly in Rebels, and we're going to follow this trend up by talking about the AT-AT-P, the early variant of the all-terrain armored transport that we see in Rebels as well as a few other places. I'm Colin, and this is Sci-Fi Deep Dive. Remember, if you enjoyed this video, to head down below and hit that subscribe button. Now, we all know and love the AT-AT, the heavy walker utilized by the Empire, first seen on screen at the Battle of Hoth, but making an appearance during the Battle of Endor and many other battles throughout the Galactic Civil War. But one of the newer additions, at least relatively newer additions to the Star Wars universe, is a prototype variant called the AT-AT-P, or simply the AT-AT in universe, that was present in the early days of the reign of the Empire, and was still in use by the time of the Galactic Civil War, so I figured today we could discuss this variant, how it differs from the primary version of the AT-AT, and a bit about how it was used. But before we do any of that, let's start with the numbers. The AT-AT-P was designed by Kuat Drive Yards and manufactured by the same, standing 31 meters tall, actually a little over 31 meters. It's a bit taller than the later variants of the AT-AT we see at the Battle of Hoth, making it actually a bit bigger and more imposing than the walkers that would come after it, but far larger and more imposing than the walkers that came before the AT-TE. Furthermore, this variant of the AT-AT was capable of doing 60 kilometers an hour, making it actually surprisingly fast, especially for its size. Its primary armament were two heavy laser cannons mounted to the chin of the vehicle. These were mounted on individually moving ball turrets. On either side were pairs of anti-personnel blasters, totaling a total of 4 on either side of the head. And there was also, interestingly, a single laser turret mounted to the back of the vehicle, the rear of the vehicle, to protect against attacks from behind, something that was lost on later variants of the Walker. The whole vehicle would be crewed by 3 individuals, 2 pilots who would control the weapon systems and actually drive the vehicle, and a commander that would give orders standing behind them. This is the same configuration we would see used on later variants of the AT-AT during things like the Battle of Hoth. So the AT-AT-P was first used in the very early days of the Empire, and was first seen at the invasion of Mon Cala, which means it's about as old as the AT-DP, making it about as old as the Empire. It's, in fact, likely that these were in development during the Clone Wars as a replacement for the AT-TE, which did have some problems. The AT-TE struggled to get over larger obstacles that were too tall for its relatively short legs, and was also vulnerable to things like anti-tank mines, which could still damage the bottom of the vehicle, even though it was up on legs. The AT-AT was designed to solve these problems by raising the chassis of the walker up, and on top of that, that made it more imposing, which is very much in line with the Tarkin Doctrine mentality of trying to be as scary a military force as possible. So these were almost more weapons of terror than weapons of war, but they were still used in their fair share of conflicts. So the AT-AT-P was first seen during the Battle of Mon Cala, but would play a much larger role during the Lothal insurrection during the events of Star Wars Rebels, where they would be deployed pretty prominently by the Empire, both on Lothal and on related missions elsewhere in the sector, which does fit in with the way these walkers were likely used. Well, it's likely that they were replaced relatively early by the newer version of the AT-AT, which was smaller and a little bit easier to maneuver and transport to and from a battlefield. It would remain in place, particularly at ground facilities and in operations being carried out on the Outer Rim and further away from the Galactic Core, operations that maybe aren't seen as quite as crucial to the Empire as other places that need the newest and nicest technology. As such, these walkers still saw their way into battlefields all across the early days of the Rebel Alliance, and that sort of era directly before the Battle of Scarif. It's also worth noting that we do see them deployed on Kashyyyk as well in 14 BBY to engage Saw Gerrera's partisans. We see them being deployed on Selos by Imperial forces hunting the Spectres, which had taken refuge there among a group of retired clone troopers, resulting in a small battle between an AT-TE and 3 of these new AT-AT-Ps, or no, not new at this point, but newer than the AT-TE. We see them used in several occasions on Lothal, including one instance where they're used to protect Princess Leia's ships while she is visiting the planet. And they were obviously present during the Battle of Lothal, where Rebel forces fought to liberate the planet Lothal from Imperial forces. But after that, they become far less common, often being replaced by the later service model of the AT-AT, what we see during the Battle of Hoth and the Battle of Endor, and countless other battles. And while it's likely this newer model was around and present at the time of the events of Star Wars Rebels, it's clear that the events of Star Wars Rebels didn't warrant the use of newer, more advanced Imperial military technology. And while the newer version does have some advantages, the smaller size, a reinforced set of armor plates, I do think this older version is slightly better for its rear-facing cannon and larger profile, which, if you're trying to be an intimidating military force, is a pretty big bonus. But if you'd like to learn more about the AT-AT that would ultimately come to replace the AT-AT-P, I'll leave a link up here to my video on the original all-terrain armored transport, which is utilized by the Galactic Empire. And I'd like to let me know down in the comments whether you prefer this version of the AT-AT or the one we saw at the Battle of Hoth. Do you like the old classic version, or do you think this newer version, which does tie back to some original concept art, is a good-looking walker and a better piece of military equipment? And if you have anything else you'd like to see me cover in Star Wars or anywhere else in science fiction, you can let me know down below in the comments. Last but not least, if you enjoyed this video, head down below, hit the like button, the subscribe button, and the bell icon so you get notified when I upload new videos. So for Sci-Fi Deep Dive, I'm Colin, and I will see you next time.